Hello everyone, I am Dinakar Peri, a fellow with the Security Studies program and your host. So let's get started. For this episode, I have three issues to flag that happened in the last 10 days, 10 to 2 weeks, 10 days to 2 weeks. The first one, last week, the Defense Acquisition Council, that's the highest body which approves procurements in the Ministry of Defense in India. And that's headed by the Defense Minister, Rajnath Singh, currently. So the DAC, which met last week, approved procurements of about 67,000 crores in rupees. And among them, there are a whole series of upgrades and maintenance stuff. But among them, one of the important ones was approval for the three armed forces to procure more medium altitude, long range, long endurance unmanned aerial vehicles. These are the Heron class of vehicles. I'll just show you what the Heron class is just for your this thing. So that's the Indian Army's Heron, which is flying in one of the forward areas. So that's Heron, Israeli origin, taking off in a forward airfield, Indian Army's airfield somewhere in the forward area in the eastern sector. I'll say that. So why is it significant? Because in the post Op Sindoor episode, UAVs, a range of them, right from the big ones to the small drones, counter drone systems, and air defense systems have become critical. We have seen how they performed in those 4 days. So they have become really critical battlefield enablers as well as critical factors how you shape the battlefield. So here, again a context, in 2023, the CDS, the Chief of Defence Staff of India, General Anil Chauhan, ordered 2 studies across a tri-service basis. The number of the high-end unmanned aerial vehicles required for 3 services, and 2, the number of attack helicopters required, heavy attack helicopters. So one of the outcomes of the study on the UAVs was that the Indian Armed Forces needed 31 HALE, as they are called, high altitude, long endurance UAVs. And the second one is the medium altitude, long endurance UAVs. So for the HALE category, India has already signed 31 MQ-9Bs from the US, which deliveries will start in about 3 years from now. That, in fact, the study has recommended that 31 is an enough number. And in the male category, as the medium altitude, long endurance, the study recommended that the 3 services together require about 155 of them. So as I said, the 2 categories of UAVs, the male category 155 of them, and the HALE 31 of them. That's the study recommendation, and 31 is already done. It's already been signed. So the remaining category is the male. Now we'll see that. We don't have the numbers of how much the DSA has approved, but we'll get the details going forward. And in this context, another aspect is that a major upgrade, a comprehensive upgrade package for all the Herons in service, because the male category is actually predominantly Israeli. For an upgrade of them is actually been pending for the last several years now, which is estimated to be cost about 21,000 crore rupees. This again was the costing a few years back. That's also still pending as we speak. And in this context, we'll also see probably more drone acquisitions, drones and counter drones under the emergency procurement, which again the MOD has sanctioned to the 3 services post Op Sindoor. What does emergency procurement mean? Very briefly, this was actually a emergency financial provision given to the 3 services to go buy things, systems, ammunition, anything, anything required, anything considered critical, or gaps, to fill the gaps of the shelf up to 300 crore rupees. They can just go and buy it. This was given for the first time after the Uri terror attack in 2016, and it has since been given a few times, 5 times to be specific. The current one is the 6th tranche, and we have actually seen a lot of the loitering munitions used in Op Sindoor were actually initially procured under the emergency procurement. So that's the first part of it. So coming to the next one, the second thing I would like to highlight in this episode is the ongoing deployment of Indian naval ships to Southeast Asia. So Indian Navy does extend, a large number of bilateral, trilateral, multilateral exercises, passage exercises, and several engagements in various formats. Why is this one significant? Among this, one of the visits was a port call to Philippines, which happened just a few days back, and which also in a way coincided with the visit of the Philippines president to India, which happened from uh, August 4th. So the three ships, a destroyer, uh, anti-submarine corvette, and a fleet tanker, three frontline ships, were in Philippines. And while they did a exercise and so on and so forth, the Philippines defense chief actually called it the first maritime patrol between the two countries in the West Philippine Sea. That is an interesting and an important aspect, which also shows how India is actually more open to such engagements, because that is actually something which Philippines has in dispute with China. And in fact, China did react, to that statement, saying that it has to be settled bilaterally and no other country should, get into it. So that's not surprising, coming from China. So, and this is actually the only second case where a joint patrol has been acknowledged by not India, but a partner with which India was exercising with. The first one is France. The first such joint patrol acknowledged by the French Navy or officials was in 2020, and in the southern Indian Ocean, the French Reunion Island. And Indian Navy deployed a P-8I long-range maritime patrol aircraft for that, which actually took on French naval personnel on board. And that was again the second iteration of it, a couple of years down the line. And why is it again important? I'll take you back a few years. In 2016, then commander of the US PACOM commander, now Indo-Pacific Command, Admiral Harry Harris, he was here in India for the Raisina dialogue, where he actually, I happened to have asked a question, and he actually gave a response saying, in the near future, he would like to see Indian and US naval vessels steaming together, on joint patrols in the Indian Ocean. And that actually raised a lot of apprehensions here in New Delhi. And then Defense Minister Manohar Parrikar, in fact, went on record to say India does not do joint patrols, but it does joint exercises. So that was the apprehension. India has always been cautious about the word joint patrols. So in fact, that's what has changed, in these years. That's a change that's clearly happening. And again, one important metric of how much things have changed is the joint statement issued in February when Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi was in Washington DC, where referring to the Quad Summit, which India is scheduled to host in November, the two sides gave a statement. I'll just read from the statement quickly, where they said the leaders will actually finalize, activate new Quad initiatives on shared airlift capacity to support civilian response to natural disasters and maritime patrols to improve interoperability. So that's again an important, metric which shows how much Indian, perception has changed, or India is open to engagement, in that sense. So from there, I'll actually now take to the third aspect. Third aspect is again last month, a vessel, a 10,000 ton vessel called INS Nistar was commissioned into the Indian Navy. It's a diving support vessel. So there are a lot of ships commissioned. Several commissioning actually have happened. Commissionings, launches happened in the recent past, in the last couple of months. So why is this one important? This particular thing is important because it fills a critical void in the region and for the Indian Navy. So submarine rescue capability is a very niche capability, only with a very few countries. And that's something, it's not just expensive, it's an expertise, it's a skill, it's an expertise. And that's something which actually has been a gap. So Indian Navy procured two deep submersible vessels called DSRVs in 2018 from UK. But the point is, the vessels are limited by the mother vessel. They have to be attached to a mother vessel, which makes their operation, which enables their operation and effective use. So in the absence of a dedicated vessel, then Indian Navy had to lease a vessel from the Oceanographic Department and was using it. And there was one vessel which actually had to cater to the entire Indian coastline on the east and the western coasts. That was the limitation. And if there was a major crisis, that would have been a problem. So, but they did manage with one vessel, and now this commissioning gives a major fillip because there's actually two vessels. The first one was just commissioned in about 6 months. The second vessel is set to be commissioned. So, Indian Navy will have one submarine rescue vessel on each coast and one DSRV attached to that vessel, which actually makes it a great capability addition in times of distress. And why is that important? On two fronts. One, for the Indian Navy. Indian Navy has a conventional submarine fleet which is quite aging. Why? As on today, Indian Navy operates 7 Russian Kilo class submarines and 4 German HW submarines and 6 new Scorpion class submarines, the French. The oldest of the Kilo and HW, both conventional submarines, are 38, 39 years old. They have been upgraded, modified, they're actually on the verge of now phasing out. So in the submarine, the conventional submarine capability is actually, precarious, so to say. So, and as on today, Indian Navy has 2 submarine acquisition programs underway. One is the 3 more additional follow-on Scorpions, for which the deal actually was almost there, but the final approval from this Cabinet Committee on Security hasn't been done yet, so it's waiting, and we don't know. It's not clear as to how soon it will be done. And once it's done, it will actually take 5 to 6 years for the first submarine to roll out, because the line is now done. All the 6 submarines in the first under Project 75 that were required are all over now. They actually have to do all the supply chains and everything from scratch. That's one. The other bigger deal actually is the Project 75 India, under which the Indian Navy has been planning to procure 6 advanced conventional submarines. And after a decade-long process, recently the bid from Germany's TKMS, which also built the HWs, was declared compliant under technical evaluation. That actually was a joint bid with Mazagon Dock Limited, Mumbai, which will be licensed manufacturing submarines under technology transfer in India once the deal is done. So for that, the final phase of commercial negotiations, and there'll also be a G2G between India and Germany because it's such a huge deal, and there'll also be B2B agreement with the 2 companies involved, and there will be a B2G business. Indian government will sign an agreement with Mazagon Dock Limited. There will be 3 agreements. It's a tripartite agreement, and it's quite a massive deal. So that's actually waiting. But either way, before 2030-31, any of them is unlikely to materialize. So Indian Navy is actually lined up an upgrade program, which is most of it is actually done. And even the Scorpions are actually scheduled to go for refits when there's again a milestone there. Each of the Scorpions is going to get an AIP module, Air Independent Propulsion. And what is an independent? What is it? What does AIP mean? It is essentially a block which is put into a submarine which has fuel cells, so generates, enables oxygen generation on board, prevents the submarine from having to surface periodically, and thereby increasing the submergence of the vessel and so the stealth. So essentially, a conventional submarine stays underwater for longer with an AIP module. So for that, an indigenous AIP module developed by DRDO, the Defense Research Development Organization, India's R&D organization, it has been under testing phase for several years now. It's now at a certain phase where it has to be tested on an actual submarine. The ground testing, lab testing is over now. It has to be put on a submarine, and you don't have submarines floating around. You need a submarine. So that's actually now going to happen. So when the first of the Scorpion class submarines, the INS Calvary, when it goes for the first refit, the submarine is going to open up. The AP block is huge. It's probably the size of your room, if not bigger. So they put it in the middle of the submarine and they reseal the whole submarine. So it means you have to validate the whole submarine again. So it's expected to take about 2.5 years. So because the first one, it's a iteration process. It will go to a series of trials and tests and validations. And once that's established, all subsequent submarines in the Scorpion series, as they go for a refit, will also get an AIP module, thereby enhancing their endurance, significantly enhancing their endurance. And these are the most modern boats and will remain in service for a very long time. So this is the process. And in fact, just last week of July, to be more specific, Naval Group, which manufactures the Scorpion class submarines from France, and DRDO extended an initial agreement for the incorporating the indigenous or DRDO's AIP module on the Scorpion submarines. And why? Because the OEM support is required to do the whole process, and DRDO is the developer of the AIP module. So that process, they have actually signed an agreement to take that forward. And now, as I said, the next phase is actually now set to roll out when the first submarine goes out for refit. So that's the importance of it. And I'll just quickly, before we conclude this, I'll just quickly show a short video of the Nistar as well as the DSRV, what it means, so you can just get a glimpse.
Hands to action station. Hands to action station. Assume damage control stage 1, condition. All position, explosion response off-through. Hands to action station. Hands to action station.
MCR, pull ahead both engines. NO, close up diving stations.
So this is the Nistar, how it happens, how things unfold.
Raise switchboard, spiraling of DS completed. Switchboard in DP configuration.
Heading 090, calling button, screen of starboard.
So that's a short listing of the Nistar. This is the DSRV, what you see on your screen. And that was the earlier vessel, which actually, to which the DSRV was hooked up to. You can just see it there. And to add, India has offered the capability to countries in the region. Indian Navy has signed an agreement with South African Navy. India airlifted its DSRV in a C-17 Global Globemaster when Indonesian submarine was in distress. Though it actually out of hand, so the plane turned back. Unfortunately, no one could be rescued in that incident. So that's exactly why it's critical. And why is ocean or submarine deep sea rescue so critical? For just a small metric, look at the number of people who have traveled to space, or people who climbed Mount Everest, and compared to how many people have, say, as simple as circumnavigated the globe on the surface, or how many who have done deep sea rescues. That will give you your answer. It's much more challenging. So that's exactly why this is a really critical capability. And I'll end this episode there. Hope I've added some value to you. So if you liked it, please like it, subscribe it, follow it, and please share your feedback. If there is anything specific, we are always open to ideas. We look forward for your feedback. Thank you.